It's not groundbreaking to find things that will kill cancer. It's groundbreaking to find things that will kill cancer while helping our healthy cells maintain their integrity. We were published in 2 different medical journals because one is about oxidative stress and preventing disease, and then the other one was for treating cancer.
You've done a research that is beneficial for both humans and animals, and could potentially go up against big pharma.
My business partner right now would be like, don't say anything, you're too important to us. The groundbreaking, number one thing that is most important of this entire study. Doesn't matter whether you believe in natural medicine or you don't, but if you have something that's science-backed, is considered basically a drug, and you can give that to your patient and have as much hope that it's going to help as much as chemo or more without reducing the side effects, everyone's excited. This will definitely separate and become a treatment for veterinarians.
It really has the power to drastically change how veterinary oncologists even are able to treat their patients. Cancer is one of the leading causes of death in adult dogs. In fact, according to the American Veterinary Association, nearly 50% of dogs over the age of 10 are diagnosed with cancer. That means 1 in 2 dogs over the age of 10. The National Cancer Institute and National Library of Medicine report that nearly 6 million dogs in the United States are diagnosed with cancer each year. Statistics show that dogs in the US are diagnosed with cancer 3 times more than humans in the US. But bear with me, there are some good news here as well. Research shows that only 5 to 10% of cancer is actually genetic. So that means 90% of cancer is actually preventable, but requires major lifestyle changes. In simple terms, pet parents like you and I have an incredible opportunity to help prevent cancer in our pets. As pet parents, we can actively change our lifestyle and change our pet's lifestyle to significantly reduce the risk of cancer. So no matter what age your dog is right now, cancer prevention has to be on top of the list of your priority. Today, we are going to be joined by cancer researcher Julianne Lee, and we are going to dive deep into the new groundbreaking research that she has been conducting for the past 5 years at the Dalhousie University in Canada. Let's dive into this topic and see what we can learn from the research that's been going on. Welcome, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So for the past 5 years, you have been conducting a cancer research study at Dalhousie University. And you've made major progress in your study, including publishing a peer-reviewed scientific article on the contents of your study, which is a huge, huge deal. First of all, congratulations on that. It's been such a long journey.
Yes, it has. There's been 2, actually. So one was a peer-reviewed medical journal on basically on the cancer perspective of it, and then the other one was for oxidative stress and sort of cancer prevention, anti-inflammatory, that sort of stuff. So we were reviewed and published in two medical journals.
Wow, that's
awesome.
That's amazing. And we're super excited to dive into your research with you today. So to start off, maybe can you just talk a little bit more about what inspired you to start cancer research in the first place?
Sure. I mean, it goes way back to my dog getting cancer when he was 4. And that was a very long time ago, like 1992, I think. And me going, okay, I was in conventional medicine at the time, and it completely turned my whole, life around, because I'd been raised very holistically, but then completely jumped ship and went completely conventional. And then Broody got cancer when he was 4, and I had already been sort of wondering, why we didn't do more integrative stuff in vet medicine and animal medicine in general. So, I was very upset, and my mom just said, "Julie, you know what to do. Do the surgery, but don't do chemo, don't do radiation, don't do any of the invasive stuff, and just work with Virginia." And Virginia was our family naturopath, herbalist, dot dot dot. So that's what I did, and you know, the incredible oncologist and surgeon where I took him to a big referral clinic in Toronto, and they were blown away by the time I got him in for the surgery and everything. They were blown away about the size of the tumor. They had
Mm.
shrunk like drastically in, I think, 17 days, maybe. I don't remember. But anyways, they didn't have to resect any bowel. He recovered fully, and then uh, he went on to live until he was, I think, 16, 15 or 16. I don't even remember now. But
Wow.
uh, changed my whole direction. I went to Spain, came across homeopathy, decided that's what I wanted to do. Did 4 years at human homeopathic medicine in Vancouver, and then went to the British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons program in England for another 4 years. So at my practice, I saw a lot of cancer and a lot of end stage cancer because my vet hospital was, you know, strictly holistic at the beginning, and we weren't even really integrative. We were completely holistic. And um lots of people coming and saying, we can't do chemo, or the chemo's not working, or my dog has cat has cancer, horse has cancer, tons of cancer, way too much cancer.
Mhm.
And then when I opened my really big integrative hospital, which was huge, um, people came from all over the place to like, the United States. One dog flew in from Sweden once, just to do cancer therapies on these animals. So then, out here in Nova Scotia, I deal with a lot of cancers with my horses. I, have personally gone through this with my own dog now, a year and a half ago. So cancer is, it's not something that just happens once in a while now with animals, but I don't remember it happening when I was a kid. And I was
Mm.
tons of dogs. I grew up on a massive dog rescue on a farm. I mean, sometimes we had over 20 dogs. And when I say over 20 dogs that we were fostering, these are over 20 dogs that lived in our house and
Wow.
Mm.
in the farm. And like, they had amazing lives. But yeah, like I've been around it a lot. So I have a horse rescue farm here, and how this all came about and sort of came together was I was trying to find a graduate student at Dalhousie University to see if they wanted to come and do some work with me on an idea that I had for horses, which was called free choice medication. And meaning that, planting certain herbs and watching the horses go to certain herbs, like doing all the blood work, because all the horses here, when I get them, are sick, right?
Mhm.
So anyways, I have this huge plan to do this thing, and I sent it to Dalhousie, and I said, would you have anybody interested to come and help me? And they're like, oh wow, yeah, this is very cool. Why don't you come in and talk to us? So I went in, and when I was there, um, uh, Dr. Vasantha said to me, he's like one of the head food science specialists there, said to me, um, "Have you worked with cancer much?" And I said, "Yeah, too much, way too much." And he said, "Yeah, well, I've been hearing it's really getting like in a really bad place with companion animals." And I said, "It is. It's in a really bad place. Like, they say that 1 in 2 dogs will get cancer. Blah blah blah." So he said, "Would you be interested in working with us, looking at cancer research?" And I said, "Absolutely, I would be interested." He said, "Okay, why don't you go away, think about it, think about how you might approach it, create a hypothesis, and when you're finished, bring it back to us and let's take a look. So I did. And that's what started it. That's what started the whole, 5.5 years ago, and I went to Dion and said, Dion's my business partner at Adored Beast. And I said, we have this chance to do this. And I really think that we should, I think we should try. So he said, yeah, of course, let's do it. So that's where we are.
You mentioned earlier 1 in 2 dogs getting cancer, and this is also according to the AVMA.
Oh, yeah.
But you've also said that you have noticed more dogs getting cancer than just 20 years ago. So, like, what are your thoughts on that? Why do you believe so many dogs are being diagnosed with cancer?
Yeah.
Like, just we don't need to like expand on this because that's a whole entire topic in itself.
Yeah.
But just a few reasons.
Yeah, and I think we should at one point talk about it because,
Definitely.
like in another podcast or something, because I do have very differing sort of philosophies of why we're seeing so much cancer. But I think the basics, without getting
Mhm.
too deep into it,
Mhm.
when I was young, that's what I was saying. Like when I was young, I grew up around dogs constantly, and it was rare to see cancer.
Mhm.
And that was, like 60 years ago. If we saw a dog with cancer, it was super rare.
Mhm.
And then, when I started practicing 25 years ago, started to see it a lot. And then now I just, I do my AJAs, and sort of every second question is, my dog has cancer, my dog has cancer, my dog has cancer.
Wow.
So I think that, the increase in cancer in people are equally as high. And I feel like what happens is that there is so much chronic disease that, um, from everything from pollution to not having any kind of valuable nutrients in our food, to like, I think that what's happening with cancer, it's an accumulative effect. So
For
I
sure.
remember doing this course on stuff that you put on your skin, on cosmetics and stuff, and cosmetics and toxins and cancer and things like that. And they were saying, you can put, 16 different things that are very low on the carcinogenic warning list. You're allowed to put them in because they're low. But if
Mhm.
you put 16 of them in, that low all of a sudden becomes high, right?
Mhm.
Because it's this accumulative effect. I look at living that way. And I look at dogs and cats and horses and people that way. It's like, okay, there's such an accumulative effect that is affecting our cells every single solitary day, that and we're kind of like either ignoring it or not understanding it or not paying attention to it. And then what happens is the cells are being, the cells are being very challenged. They're, going through a lot of oxidative stress. They're constantly being bombarded by something. And then
Mhm.
not, which is a really important piece, not not balanced back. So they're getting
Mhm.
all of this at it, right? They're getting all of these toxins and stressors and things to the cells, but we're not, um, then trying to support the cells by derailing some of that.
Mhm.
So the cells are becoming oxidated. They're, you know, um, becoming weak. And then it's just, for me, it's almost like survival of the fittest. Then the body all of a sudden goes in, okay, like we just have to survive. Like the body,
Mhm.
all of our bodies are wired to survive. So when the cells are dying at such a rate because of all of the, trauma that's happening to them, then I feel like the body then goes, well, um, we have to overpopulate. It goes into a survival mode, which is like going rogue, like a rogue cancer cell, right? Like it's not
Mhm.
the normal life death process that's supposed to be happening with cells. This healthy cells are dying too quickly. then other cells start to overpopulate to compensate. That's kind of in a nutshell why I think it's happening, along with, you know, not having sex hormones. And I'm not saying we should never spay or neuter. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's another added one, right?
Yeah.
And dogs not having freedom, not being alone inside a lot, cats never getting outside to use their minds, and horses being locked in box stalls and only ridden, and not like, I think it's a lot of it is suppressed freedom to be that species, to act like a dog, to act like a horse, to act like a cat. I don't feel like they can. And none of them are, really anybody's fault or anything like that. But what happens is, it's like I said, it's the accumulative effect of all of those. So sometimes, if we can reduce even little bits of it, you bring that thermometer down a little bit, right? When we did with the wolf study with probiotics, right? When I did the species oriented wolf probiotics, those wolves, they aren't getting cancer. They're not like our dogs. They're living much longer. They're having puppies when they're 10 years old. And these are really big animals. They're having puppies when veterinary medicine is saying that, dogs should be dead by the time they're 10, when they're that big. Right. And they're they're procreating at that age. They have this incredible social life, right? This community. They're eating raw food, right? And think about it. They're still getting the same environmental toxins from a perspective of the air,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
They're still probably drinking water that has glyphosates in them, because they're drinking from streams and stuff where forests have been sprayed. I think the two big things is that they're eating fresh food. They're not being over vaccinated. They're not having a bunch of drugs. They're healing even if they get cut without antibiotics. Their bodies are very resilient, because their bodies are allowed to work the way they need to work. They're not it's suppressed. And they have more stress than they used to, right? Because, we're sort of encroaching on their land a lot. Like, they don't have as much space, and they're hunted and trapped and things like that. So they have different kinds of stresses. They have stress of the weather. So I think that's got to be the difference, right? They just don't have that accumulative effect of everything.
So earlier you were talking about how the University of Dalhousie, how they approached you about this cancer research and asked you to think of a hypothesis and then get back in touch with them to start this study on cancer research. So what was your original hypothesis when you started?
So when I left and thought about it, I had to try and think about, my clinic clearly. Like, what did I use in my clinic? Thinking of the, literally thousands over the course of almost 30 years of animals that I treated with cancer. And, what was my go-to? What was my favorite? What was all of that stuff? So first thing was mushrooms. Because homeopathy is also something that I always used and still do. But that's not something that we could research. So I had to dig into what natural ingredients could I use, and what was my favorite, and what did I really feel. And then when I was doing that, I was going through a whole bunch of cases actually that I brought out here that I still have, and looking at things. And what came up for me was the type of cancer first, which is interesting. Like there are a lot of treatments for cancers, and but the one that I felt that there wasn't a lot of treatment for was really painful, very insidious, and was osteosarcoma. And how, they just look like they have a limp, and then the limp gets worse. And by the time they're like, wow, this limp is really bad, they try NSAIDs and they do this and they do that, or they take an x-ray and it's still not really totally valid. Like, yeah, for sure, this is it. Until often it's like, oh my gosh, okay, yes, this is what it is. It's osteosarcoma. By then, they're in a lot of pain. By then, often it's metastasized to the lungs by the time they do show painful, any kind of bone pain. So the only treatment is to remove their leg, right? Amputation. But more times than not, when that's done, even with x-rays, in the x-rays and the lungs look clear, even with x-rays, by the time they are learning to walk again on 3 legs, they're dying from lung cancer. So it's a, it has to be diagnosed with, more like scans and MRIs and things like that, because it's so small. Normally that's not what you do. They do x-rays, but even when you can diagnose it, then there's still not a lot of treatment for it. It's really invasive. So I started off with that in mind. Okay, what is the one, if I could, because cancer treatment's really very specific, right? So when I had to do this research, it's like, okay, we'd have to purchase cells. We'd have to do, so it's not just this like broad range of, oh, well, this might help with cancer. We had to be very specific of what cancer we wanted to look at. So when I went back to them, with osteosarcoma in mind. And when I was in practice, I had the really great experience of working very closely for many years with a Chinese medicine doctor from China. And he taught me about mushrooms in a really different way, a very Western unscientific way, which is like doctrine of signatures or characteristics of the mushroom, which is very similar to homeopathy. So I caught on really fast because I was a homeopath. So when I thought about, and I've also taught at the American Homeopathic Association with matching physiology and homeopathy and things like that. So it's an interest of mine as well. I love physiology. So I was looking at some x-rays of osteosarcoma and really taking a really, really hard look at them and thinking, okay, like what mushroom looks like this? What mushroom acts like this? What mushroom does this replicate so much, right? And it was chaga, like immediately.
Wow.
So, chaga is more like a fungus, but it grows out of the tree. So of a bone, yes, it's inside the bone, but it grows out, right? Often grows out like a lump. And
Yeah.
the bone and the chaga itself is bone hard. It's really, really hard. And so is osteosarcoma.
Wow.
So to me, and there's so much research on cancer and chaga, tons of
Yeah,
chaga.
exactly.
And so I thought, okay, it's one that I used at the clinic lots. I love that one. It matches the characteristics, but it doesn't just end there. I was like, what else could I work with that could carry the medicinal cancer fighting value of what we know to be true with chaga to a deeper level, like more into the cell, so that it could target the cancer cells better. And I've been working with phytoplankton for a long, long time at my practice and, through work now. And there are so many things with phytoplankton that are coming out that are just blowing my mind, that I've been kind of preaching about it for a very long time, intuitively almost. The other thing is that the whole world was covered with phytoplankton at one point before the trees. So phytoplankton would be in our ancient soils, and so I looked at that, and so that was my hypothesis, is to try to isolate the medicinal value of chaga and use the phytoplankton as a mode of sort of transportation, supporting the healthy cells with the mitochondria, things like that. So that's what I put them with.
That is so interesting to hear it from you like that, because obviously we're familiar with all of the studies around chaga and how beneficial chaga mushrooms are for cancer prevention and treatment. And in particular, the study that found that chaga, the supplementation with chaga mushrooms, reduced the tumor size by 60% in mice. So,
Yeah.
like, we're familiar with that research, but also to hear you say that, like, even the anatomy of the chaga mushroom is similar to that of osteosarcoma is so interesting as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Just the way it grows, the way it comes out of the tree, um,
Mm,
the hardness of it, because it's
exactly.
rock.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you take, and the other cool, that's not cool because we were very careful, like the way we harvest chaga is
Mhm.
sustainable, right? So we have a very good, brilliant friend that's done all kinds of, he even has an app now showing that if you harvest the chaga properly, it will continue to grow. And
Mm.
Mm.
I find that really even interesting because it's like when you completely take out the chaga. So how I went there, it's like, okay, well, if we take this bone, if we take this limb off,
Mhm.
the cancer has nowhere to continue to grow. So
Mhm.
then when it's in the lungs, you remove the part of the body where the body's trying to get rid of this cancer that's the least life-threatening, right?
Yeah.
Like in its estimation. Like a limb
Hmm.
is less life-threatening than a lung to some point. Even though they wouldn't be able to hunt or walk or anything without their limbs. But from the way the body tries to get things out, it's a less life-threatening organ. But
Yeah.
when you don't treat the cancer and you remove the limb, then the cancer is still there and it metastasizes even faster.
Mhm. Mm.
Mm.
What happens if you dig out that chaga, the tree dies.
Mhm.
The entire tree dies. The tree
Wow.
doesn't continue to grow, right? So you
Wow.
can kill the tree as well. So even the way, even looking at it from that perspective, it's very, very similar to the doctrine of signatures, it's called.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a yeah, interesting.
Hmm. And I know, like, because we also offer both chaga and phytoplankton in our store, and we know, like as you mentioned already, the research around cancer, but these two ingredients, I would say,
Mhm.
are like super super high in antioxidants.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little to that and how important that is to cancer research itself?
Yeah, well, what I'll do now is that when I started working with the research part, cancer research
Hmm.
is very structured. I'm not very structured,
Hmm.
so I had a hard time initially because my brain is like all over the place.
Hmm.
So, I started seeing things in the research and I'm like, okay, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. Well, we can't do this because this is what we got. These are the perimeters that we have to stay in order for this to be taken seriously, in order for this
Okay.
to follow the protocols.
Hmm.
But, and I don't know if I should talk to you about this right now, but this is when I did this, is that I kept going, okay, but this is happening and this is wonderful. That must mean that it could potentially help to prevent cancer. And
Hmm.
that's, of course, I want to help animals and people with cancer. Of course I do. But my I would be much happier if I could reduce the incidence so that they don't have to suffer. They don't have to be going through anything. If I can reduce the incidence of cancer, it would make me a lot happier than finding even treatment for it. But
Hmm.
I wasn't allowed, right? I wasn't allowed to do both. And then I came in one day and all the scientists were very excited and happy and everyone was smiling and they're like, okay, we need to, because I was like I basically had to okay everything with the study. So they sat me down and they were like all excited to tell me this. And I don't know if I should say this now because it's maybe part of I don't know what you're gonna ask me later. But in that moment, and I can tell you what it was later, in that moment, I said, okay, this is amazing. we are now figuring out a way. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to figure out a way of looking at cancer prevention. And I
Mm.
don't know. So we had to do a whole new study on top of the cancer study. So we had to
Wow.
do extra studies around the cancer study.
Mhm.
So we did. We started it that day and started looking at the oxidative stress, inflammation, free radicals, all of the stuff that causes cell trauma that we know, pro-inflammatory cytokines, uh, like all the things that we do know uh, poke the bear when it comes
Hmm.
to cancer. And
Yes.
these ingredients were definitely addressing those, for sure, addressing those precursors, so to speak. And that's why we were published in two different magazines or two different medical journals, because one is about, like oxidative stress and preventing disease, and then the other one was for treating cancer, an actual cancer.
Mm.
So they both have phenomenal abilities to decrease and support the cells that support the or derail the precursors to cancer.
Hey pet parents, quick pause. I want to share something that's made a huge difference in our dog's life. Our sponsor, Adored Beast, creates some of the highest quality all natural pet supplements and probiotics out there. They revolutionized pet health by creating the world's first species-specific probiotics. So whether you have a dog, a cat, or even a horse, they got you covered with formulas tailored to your pet's unique needs. From supporting immunity and easing allergies to helping with joints, skin issues, and digestion, Adored Beast helps you proactively manage your pet's health and cut down on future vet bills with effective natural supplements backed by science. We have been using Adored Beast for over 6 years now with our French Bulldog Milka. She's 9 years old now and she's still as healthy and active as ever. The Adored Beast probiotics, the Jump for Joints, and the Liver Tonic have been essential in keeping Milka free of the typical health issues we often see in older dogs. Honestly, our vet bills are almost non-existent, and we do credit a lot of that to Adored Beast and using these effective natural products all throughout Milka's life. If you're ready to support your pet's health naturally, head over to PAWDEGA.us to get 10% off your next Adored Beast order with the discount code ABA. Free shipping on qualified orders within the USA. Again, just visit PAWDEGA.us and use the code ABA for 10% off. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's jump back into today's episode. So you've mentioned earlier that you wanted to kind of focus on osteosarcoma. Was there any other cells that you chose for the study as well, or and if so, why did you choose other cells?
So yes, we did choose osteosarcoma, and it was very interesting how we did it too. We chose a cell that was from an 8-year-old spayed uh, female standard poodle from like
Mhm.
1968, I think.
Oh,
Even
wow.
it was way back. I
Wow.
know, and I thought that was kind of cool because it just gave like such a strong genetic, um, uh, sort of a genetic piece to it. But
Mm.
I was working with cancer researchers that did human cancer research, right?
Hmm.
And they were excited to try more than just canine. So we wound up buying human breast cell cancer, uh,
Mhm.
human liver cell cancer, human osteosarcoma, canine
Wow.
osteosarcoma, and canine histiocytosis. And
Mhm.
the reason I chose the histiocytosis one is just because of the high levels of histamine related diseases that we see in dogs.
Mhm.
Like lots of different things from, allergies to histiocytoma, like all different things.
Wow, I did not know that this study actually involved human tissue as well, or human cells.
Yeah.
How important is, because I know that canine cancer and human cancer very closely parallel each other. So that's quite significant.
Yeah. Well, that was why we were so excited, and Dal was so excited because when we got in the journals, because often so when you get to a certain point with Dalhousie or with any university, and what you have found, your findings publishable, right? It's called.
Hmm.
They want you to publish them because it gives credibility to the universities. They get excited, right? Like they did a big, launch for us, the whole nine art, because Dal was quite excited about our findings.
Hmm.
So why they were really excited too, though, is because they said, okay, let's try to get this in in some journals, but don't get your hopes up because it's a mammalian study, right? Which
Okay.
means two different species.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So mostly the studies are either, rats, mice, human, dog, horse, right? They're independent species. So
Hmm.
when we were published with a mammalian study, they were really excited because it is a peer reviewed, and they're open journals too, and that means that they have to be even more scrutinized because
Hmm.
you can cite those, the people at school can cite those published pieces, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's Dal's excited about both people and animals. Of course I'm excited about it as well. 100 million% I am.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a different field for me, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
the human side is a different field. So once we keep moving into the study, we'll probably, figure out what we want to do when it comes to the human side.
For anyone listening right now, we will link to the study and the graphs in the show notes as well. So if you'd like to look at this visually while you're listening, definitely check the show notes on this. So, can you explain a little bit about the methodology used to test the chaga mushrooms and the phytoplankton? And are there certain stages of cancer that this research actually focused on?
So I think the best way to explain this, and if I'm not explaining it clearly enough, or if I'm not getting into depth, I can get into more depth. All right. So all of uh, the canine cells and all of the human cells were treated in or tested in the lab. Obviously, this isn't live studies, right? These are all cell studies. And what we had to do is we had to go through different processes by extracting and isolating.
Hmm.
So we would see what worked on what cells, at what concentrations, and then we would see which actual part of each ingredient was cytotoxic, it's called, which
Mm.
means killed cancer cells.
Okay.
And at what concentrations? Because some concentrations did amazing things. Other concentrations, even if they were higher, didn't do anything.
Oh,
So they were
wow.
Wow.
it's very, very specific. It's like
Mm.
Wow.
it's like the body and the cells know exactly the concentration that needs to happen. And it's not, and that's the other cool thing about it being natural. It's not like bigger's better, because
Hmm.
bigger isn't better, and bigger can be more toxic in general, right? So chaga and the phytoplankton, they did very different things too, which was pretty cool. So we isolated the specific cytotoxic effects of chaga, and
Mhm.
the specific ones with algae. And
Hmm.
then we did them independently with every single solitary cell to see exactly what would happen. Then we did them mixed together to see
Hmm.
exactly what would happen. So
Mhm.
it went through, I can't even tell you how difficult it is to be able to take something in from nature and sort of fractionize it, which isn't my thing, right? Like I don't normally do stuff like this, but for this we had to. Um, Fractionize it and isolate the specifics for the cancer fighting agent of it. And then when we mix them, like this took years, right? To try to figure out how, like we had to actually manipulate the the algae in such a way that we could even see it. You know, like removing the chlorophyll and removing sugars and removing, like it was just a really long, tedious process to find that sweet spot of what it did. And anything can be cytotoxic. Anything can anything lots of different things can kill cancer cells. Lots and
Mhm.
lots of things.
Mhm.
The problem is it also kills our healthy cells. It's also
Mhm.
super detrimental to our healthy cells. So going into this is what was my goal, is how do we find something that kills cancer, but doesn't kill the body at the same time, right? Like
Mhm.
helps to support the healthy cells, doesn't kill all the healthy cells, or isn't so toxic to the body, doesn't have so many side effects to the body. There's got to be a
Mhm.
reason. So that was one of our main focuses of how do we do that. And that we can do in the lab, right? Which is part of the process of going, okay, these are very cytotoxic. These are, you know, they're selected. And that's the other cool thing is that they select them. Like they actually go in and they're selectively cytotoxic. So they find the cancer cells, like they search out and they find the cancer cells. Because when they do that, the healthy cells maintain their integrity.
Mm.
Mm.
Is like
Yeah.
probably the number one thing that is most important of this entire study.
Mhm.
And that's the day when I came in and they are all really super excited and happy to show me this. And when I said, okay, well, this is crazy because now I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to also start a, you know, cancer prevention,
Yeah.
um, chronic disease kind of study alongside of this. So to answer your question, isolation, fractionizing it, different strengths, different amounts,
Mhm.
um, using them separately on every single solitary cell, like all the different cells, using them together in all different, you know, formulations and all different amounts on every single solitary. You can imagine how long that takes, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
A very long time. So so that's how we did it. That was the methods. We did extracts. That's the other method is we made extracts of both of them. And then out of those extracts, we isolated and fractionized and then tried them at different distillations and different strengths.
Wow, that is
Incredible.
incredible.
Yeah. And it's really good to actually like hear you talk about exactly which methodologies you've used. It's just really awesome to listen to that. And were there any certain stages of cancer that this research focused on?
Not in this. So
Okay.
this one was like just the cells, right? And the
Mhm.
cells were like, you know, end term, like fully developed cells. But what we did wind up doing for a few different reasons is that, and I didn't, you know, I really didn't want to do this because you guys know what I'm like with animals, right? And I tried to figure out a different way, but anyways, we wound up having to do mice studies. So in those studies, there's different stages, right? You have to do different stages, and uh, those are completed now. That study's completed now, but the data is being put together. So in that study, there'll be different stages. And then they were also fed different things. So they were fed the chaga extracts on their own, like the manipulated fractionized extracts on their own. They were fed the microalgae on their own, the way, the way it manipulated, and we used the ones that were the most cytotoxic, selectively cytotoxic. And then we fed them combined, like the two combined. And
Mhm.
then we fed them just the phytoplankton and chaga, but not isolated or fractionized, but at the same concentration. So
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
not manipulated, just plain phytoplankton, or like our strains of phytoplankton and our chaga, but they were the chaga was extracted at the level that we did the study, but it's we fed them like just that. It wasn't in a form that had been fractionized or isolated. So the study's going to be put, like, it's going to take a while. It's probably not going to come out until mid-February.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to show us a lot too, because it's all different stages, and
Wow.
including the anti-inflammatory, the pro-inflammatory cytokines. It's going to show us a lot of the preventative side as
Mm-hmm.
well as the treatment side.
Wow, it's so exciting, like that there's more and more to come even, and also
Oh,
just
a lot more, actually.
it's so interesting to hear how studies are conducted and how many steps you have to go through, and then also like how many side studies you're continuing to start as well. So, but so you've talked already throughout this interview a little bit about like the findings of this study, but can you give us more information on what you found? What is this groundbreaking knowledge that you've gotten throughout these different types of studies as well?
I follow some of the Canadian Cancer Research Society stuff, and they just put this thing out like just a month ago about, the biggest struggle is finding in cancer research is finding something that is cytotoxic but doesn't kill all of our healthy cells. That is the most, like, that's the top of their head right now, because
Mhm.
we're finding, and people are speaking about it more. It's just like the side effects don't outweigh,
Mhm.
like, the length that you live, right?
Mhm.
So maybe you're gonna live 9 months, or maybe you're gonna live 2 years, but in that 2 years, the 1 year of treatment is worse than anything, and then you have 1 year left, and then you die,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of people that are choosing not to do chemo and not to do
Mhm.
different oncology drugs. So they are really trying to find different ways of manipulating things so that it maintains some of the integrity of our healthy cells, so that the side
Mhm.
effects aren't as bad. So the groundbreaking, most exciting thing is, and you'll see on the graph, where the cancer cells are being killed, but the healthy cells are maintaining really good integrity. Do some of them die? Yeah. A lot of what's exciting about this is it reconfirms sometimes the crazy ideas that I have, right? Where I feel like, even with adored beast, when I formulate, I don't think that supersizing is good. I feel like where the magic comes from, or where the power comes from, or where this profound healing comes from, is the right amount with the correct formulation, where they just work in such synergy, and they just work in such harmony in the body, and then the body does the same thing. The body reacts in this homeostatic, balancing, harmonizing dance, because
Mhm.
it's nature, and nature is constantly doing this dance. It's how the earth brings itself back into homeostasis, but we keep pushing it out of homeostasis so it can't
Mhm.
stay in homeostasis, which is kind of what happens to our bodies when our bodies get cancer. So the not just what we're seeing with the ingredients and in all the research, but it confirms my my personal philosophy of how when we look in nature, when we look to nature, we really have to look to nature to teach us. We can't be
Mhm.
taking nature and going, no, 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 you have to go in this box. And that's kind of what we did when it came to this manipulation thing. But we didn't go, oh, cool. If we dump all of this in, it's going to kill all the cancer cells. Sure, it's going to kill all the cancer cells, but it's not helpful for the healthy cells. So we persevered trying like just fractions of different formulations and working with it in different ways to find this sweet spot where it was, selectively cytotoxic, but really helped to maintain the integrity of our healthy cells. So when you ask me, groundbreaking, all that, to me, that is the most important thing because it's not groundbreaking to find things that'll kill cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's groundbreaking to find things that will kill cancer while helping our healthy cells maintain their integrity.
Yeah.
And, the preventative side, there is no manipulation, right? So the preventative side, we are looking at different methods of extraction, right? So not like, but it's in its entirety. We haven't fractionized it, isolated it, or manipulated it. We've
Mm-hmm.
extracted it and mixed it differently and extracted it and worked with that differently. But we haven't manipulated it or fractionized it because what's going to happen is that once this big form of studies get all compiled, our next focus is going to be, really reaching out more on the preventative side, right?
Mhm.
Preventative, and not just prevention for cancer, prevention for chronic disease
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
cancer, right? So, because chronic disease kills a lot of animals and people too, and makes their lives not, they just don't have quality of life. They're not dying
Mhm.
from cancer, but they don't have quality of life from anything from, you know, allergies to Cushing's to arthritis to a million different things.
Mm-hmm.
So same with people, juvenile diabetes, like so many autoimmune chronic problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, a big part of our focus and one side will continue to do that prevention piece. And then I'm hoping it's going to go to a vet university for live dog studies.
Mm.
And we still have some stuff to do before I can do that. But, this is going to be two different things. So this
Wow.
will definitely separate and become a treatment for veterinarians. So in your veterinary
Amazing.
hands. So if your dog or your cat or your horse gets cancer, then you would go to your vet and they would do the treatment of this
Mm-hmm.
mix of phytoplankton and chaga. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other side will be for, hopefully for pet parents to be
Mhm.
able to feed themselves and their
Yeah.
family and their animals, a way of protecting the cells, a way
Yeah.
of trying to help derail those pro-inflammatory cytokines and precursor things.
Mm-hmm. This is so incredible. Like I'm so excited that this research is going into fruition so much because like we have been like you've talked to us about this for the past 5 years and like
Yes.
at some point we didn't even know like is this actually going to be published one day and are you able to do anything with the information that you find in the study. So
Mhm.
it's so incredibly exciting and it really has the power to like drastically change how veterinary oncologists even are able to treat their patients. So
Yeah.
it's so exciting.
It is, and the veterinarians that I've talked to Dr. Judy Morgan and Sue Armstrong and lots of integrative veterinarians. And,
Mhm.
that's doesn't matter whether you're integrative, fully conventional, fully holistic, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to see their patients suffer from side
Yeah.
effects.
No.
Like
Yes.
nobody. It doesn't matter whether you believe in natural medicine or you don't, but if you have something that's science backed, you know,
Yes.
is considered basically a drug, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it will be on some level. And you can give that to your patient and have as much hope that it's going
Mhm.
to help as much as chemo or
Mhm.
more
Mhm.
without producing the side effects. Everyone's excited. No one's not excited
Yeah.
about,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's why I chose to do it this way, was because I really wanted to support the animals that have cancer. I want to
Yeah.
support the veterinarians that, whose hands are tied, right? Because they don't have anything in their toolbox that they can fully believe in as much as they do a chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and then try to do the other side where we're trying to derail this so that they aren't getting it as much, or they aren't getting chronic disease as much, or they're just living healthier, happier lives, you
Yeah.
know?
I'm excited because we have been feeding our dog and ourselves as well chaga mushrooms and phytoplankton as well for at least the last
Yeah.
6 years, right? So I'm excited to just once again be reaffirmed in, the things that any pet parent can do to help prevent or derail cancer. But obviously, the study that you're doing, it's at much larger quantities than what we are feeding our dog right now. But I'm just happy to, hear that
But it's
these two ingredients are just so incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it still has the same, when you're treating cancer, of course, you have to, you've gotta step it up a notch
Yeah.
and do the science, do the research like this to
Mhm.
find like I said, that exact sweet spot of,
Mhm.
what do we take from this ingredient? What do we take from that ingredient? How do we mix it? How do we raise it? How do we lower it? How do we like blah blah blah?
Yeah.
So it's definitely different, for
Mhm.
sure. But when you're trying to prevent disease, or when you're trying to derail pro-inflammatory cytokines or chronic inflammation, or
Mhm.
all of this stuff, y- you're when you're in that prevention, you know support, space, it is they are natural ingredients,
Yeah.
they are. And one thing that was very important to me that I didn't speak to, that I do wanna say just quickly before we finish, is that, um, I'm a very big believer in supporting nature, right? I started working with mushrooms because I wouldn't use shark cartilage, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
kept coming into my hospital saying, "My dog has cancer. I wanna start it on shark cartilage." And we were like, "Well, we don't carry shark cartilage." And, "Well, why?" And it's like, "Well, because Julie doesn't believe in, torturing one animal to help another animal. It just doesn't
Mhm.
that philosophy doesn't match her philosophy, so we don't." And, we had a lot of people that were pretty upset because it was pretty big for a while. It was
Mhm.
very popular for a while. So I had to be like, "Okay, well, then I have to find something that's going to work better," and that's when I really started working with Dr. T, and, with mushrooms, and found it to be way better. So when I did this, we worked very hard, and Dalhousie was wonderful, actually. I've gotta take my hat off to them, and my lawyer and my business partner, and we came to an agreement, which doesn't happen very often, with universities, that we maintained the IP from a perspective, because I wanna make sure that no matter what, that whatever ingredient goes into it, even when it's fractionized, even when it's manipulated, even when it whatever, that the original ingredients does no harm to nature. Because
Mhm.
I still can't destroy nature, even if it's a tree, right?
Mhm.
That wrecks the ecosystem, that then affects the squirrels, that then affects the wolves, that then affects everything, and then eventually people, right? Because it affects the environment and the air and everything. So for me, it was incredibly important to always maintain that integrity of the ethics in which the phytoplankton and the chaga were collected. You know,
Mhm.
our phytoplankton is probably, in my opinion, the best in the world when it comes to its strains, but also how it's collected, right? It's collected.
Mhm.
It's grown on land. It doesn't remove food source from the ocean. The water comes from the ocean. They don't even use they use sunlight. They don't even use hydro. The water's filtered, like the heavy metals and things is filtered, and then that water is actually put back into the ocean. So it's a very, giving, life sustaining thing. So to me, that is really important to try and heal from something that you have respected when it comes to the ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't even know, I went on a tangent about that. But I think that taking phytoplankton and taking chaga, like you were saying, for the last 6 years, it's it's amazing. Like, it's amazing that you're doing that. Like, the prevention part of it is still that, it's the same chaga, it's the same phytoplankton, but we are making the ratios very different, and we're extracting
Mm-hmm.
of it different. Just the
Yes.
extraction process.
Yeah.
But it's
Amazing.
still coming from the same forest,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
same ethics and things.
So in your cancer study, there's new data coming out this February. And what are you so excited about regarding that new data that's coming out?
Well, it's all exciting because it's all regarding the cancer research. But what I'm really excited about is the use of chaga and phytoplankton in its crude form to derail things that we know cause cancer, and things like pro-inflammatory cytokines, chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, things like that, to support the cells when they are traumatized, like when I talked about before. So the chaga and the phytoplankton in that study is in the same ratios as in the cancer study, but they haven't been fractionized or manipulated. It's the crude stuff. So I'm excited about that, because that, in my hands, I can create something for pet parents that that I'm confident will help to prevent those precursors
Mhm.
for any kind of chronic disease, really. So anytime I can, formulate something that I feel will help, health and longevity, but more importantly, give animals a better life, just an everyday feeling better life. I really get excited about.
So I remember throughout the last 5 years, you keep telling us about some of the behind the scenes of what it's like to conduct a study. So maybe can you just talk a few minutes about the behind the scenes and what goes into conducting a study to make sure that whatever comes out of this, you will be able to use, and it will not be buried somewhere in the internet where no one can find it.
I mean,
Mm,
because also this is a very hot topic. I mean,
Yeah.
you've done a research that is beneficial for both humans and animals,
Mhm.
and could potentially go up against big pharma.
my business partner right now would be like, "Don't say anything. You're too important to us."
Yeah.
um, I
Don't
mean,
get yourself in trouble,
Oh yeah,
please.
yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
If you can't answer this question, just say
No,
you.
no, 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 no. So all of that's possible,
Hmm.
right? Like, there's good and bad in cancer research, just like there's good and bad in everything. Every research, every facet of health, there's every facet of the world, there's good and there's bad. So I do believe that there's really good people doing cancer research. I really do believe that there's, people working tirelessly to try to figure this out. Um, the behind the scenes part was that I didn't want it to get to a certain point and get shelved. like get put away somewhere. So, we worked very hard to be sure that that didn't happen, and um, or that won't happen. And it was hard because we funded a lot of this on our own, so that we didn't have to depend on somebody saying to us, no, you can't do this, or no, you can't do that, or yes, you can do this, while at the same time following the cancer regulations, as far as cancer research regulations, to the T. So
Mhm.
so even though it was, we funded it initially, and still do, but we now are far enough ahead, and because we've been published, and the research is showing super positive stuff, we are getting government grants towards
Oh,
it
wow.
now. Yeah.
Nice.
So
That's a
we have
big
to,
deal.
it is a big deal, but we still have to match it. Right?
Mhm.
So Adored Beast still has to, or, Dragonfly Research, which is funded, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
we still have to match it. So the behind the scenes is that, for people that I think people have a very bad um taste in their mouth about cancer research. There's a lot of really bad stuff that's out there. But when I see how hard the research is, like really how hard and how meticulous it is, and how I have this one scientist, and I just adore her. She's been working with us for 4 years, and she is like so dedicated and so incredible, and so is Dr. Vasantha. They all have been amazing. So, I may have been one of those people initially that was very like, oh, well, they don't want to find a cure for cancer, and they don't want to do
Mm.
this, and they don't want to do that. Like that whole, it's easy to jump on that train and be really negative. And there is, for sure, there is some of that. There's definitely some of that. Like, for me to say that that doesn't happen, of course it happens. But it happens with everything, right?
Mm.
You know, things can go sideways in every kind of industry and research and stuff. So I think that, the behind the scenes, I've learned a lot. I've have a lot more respect for it. I see how difficult it is, and you know, uh, again, I have an incredible business partner that, every single time I would say, like, okay, well, now we have to spend 4 times as much money, because the most studies that are how I want to do the most studies is going to cost way more than what it needs to cost, because I want these mice to have the very, very best treatment, and tons of people, working with them, so that they're uh, eyeballs on them, and they're not left alone, and they have their, with other
Mm.
I so and Dan's like, well, yeah, of course we'll spend the extra money to do that. And so there's a lot that goes on. There's a ton that people don't understand that goes on. But I think that when we're looking at cancer research and using natural ingredients that don't have side effects, it ramps that up even more,
Mhm.
because it can't be as easily manipulated as a drug, right? Like a drug, you can manipulate a drug much easier than you can manipulate and know what the outcome's going to be with nature, because nature has her own her own ideas that we saw. So yeah, behind the scenes, I got lots of incredible lessons. And
Mm.
like I said before, all the lessons that I do have and did get have been positive and very supportive of my sort of philosophy of nature, and what it can do, and how to understand it.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much, Julie, for taking the time today to talk with us about this amazing research that you're doing. We will definitely link in the show notes to your peer-reviewed articles and some other links for everyone who would like to read up on the story more. But can you just tell our audience where they can keep up to date with your research?
Yeah, it'll be on our Adored Beast website. And when the next data comes in, probably mid-February, then we'll have probably another AJA. I'll do a um, like what
Ask
is
Julie anything.
like my Ask Julie Anythings, yeah, and we'll send it out. We'll say, more data on the cancer research,
Mhm.
things like that. But people should stay tuned. Uh, the next, I would say 2 months, we're gonna be doing lots and lots of stuff on cancer, and then lots of stuff on, cellular support, as
Mm.
prevention, and then the data that's gonna be compiled in February, which I'm super excited to see.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you like this show and you like what we do here and you want to support us, the free and simple way to do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. Larry and I spent countless hours creating this podcast, and seeing our community grow really means the world to us and enables us to keep creating awesome content just like this.